Hello, YouTube. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you like In Flames Subterranean EP? Do you like The Gallery by Dark Tranquillity? Do you like At the Gates Slaughter of the Soul? If you've answered yes, then you need to stick around and hear this review of the new album from Upon Stone. Hello, Heavy Metallurgy. My name is Alan, and I'm here today to review the new album from Los Angeles band Upon Stone. The album is called Dead Mother Moon. It has just been released on January the 19th via Century Media Records, and it is the band's debut after having done an EP in 2021. They've kind of, jumped to the big leagues and gotten scooped up by Century Media for this debut album. The album artwork is done by Andreas Marschall, who has been doing cover art for great heavy metal bands for 30 years now. Fans may recognize him from things such as Running Wild and In Flames, the Jester Race, and Rage's Trapped album as well. His art style is very distinctive. He uses lots of, sort of a bright, ghostly white to highlight figures and details in his landscapes and backgrounds. So when you look at the Upon Stone album, it stands out right away that, yeah, this is one of his pieces for sure. So, what do we have going on with this album? Well, as you probably got from the intro clip, this is a band that's operating in the classic melodic death metal style that was popularized by Swedish bands and sort of, the Gothenburg sound in the mid and late 90s. In Flames and Dark Tranquillity being two of the huge ones, of course, At the Gates being a big part of that equation as well. So, if you're familiar with that sound and style, you have a pretty good idea of what to expect with this album. Still, there's a few very interesting things to point out along the way. One of the first things that struck me upon playing this album just once or twice was the production of it. The production has kind of a raw live sound to it, but in a good way, not in a low quality sense whatsoever. Just that compared to a lot of melodic death metal that's been done over the past decade or so, this one, yeah, sounds a bit grittier and dirtier, and I think that actually works to its credit. Sometimes melo-death projects can get a little too clean sounding, and it costs them some of their heaviness. That is not an issue on Dead Mother Moon. They've definitely got, a very raw feel, and, it gives it a really live quality. This is noticeable not just in the guitar work, but also very much in the drum work. The drums sound really cool on here. It's like the kid is right there next to you. So they did a really good job capturing the sound. Gives again the songs a really nice boost of energy. And this is a style of music that really feeds off of that kind of energy gain. If you have an album in this melodic death metal style that's too clean or a little too lifeless in the production, it really sucks the energy out of the music. And generally, these bands are going for more up-tempo, catchy songs that are really meant to, get you headbanging, get you moving around in the pit a little bit, and, yeah, help you work up a sweat. Production on this album, yeah, really nice job. Makes it stand out in a crowd and definitely accomplishes its goal. Other things you'll notice with it is that, yes, it's, sticking to a lot of the sort of, tried and true techniques of melodic death metal from the Gothenburg sound. They are not reinventing the wheel here whatsoever. A couple of little things are a little bit different. Some of the drumming is perhaps more aggressive than what you might hear on some of those old, mid and late 90s classics in this style. The guitar work also is slightly different. There's not as much of the really intricate counterpoint, and back and forth interplay between guitarists on here. The solo work also tends to be a little bit more straightforward. It has, a nice dose of that kind of guitar hotshot and guitar hero type of vibe to it. It works well. It helps give the band a little character that's distinct so that it doesn't immediately come off as being, an absolute carbon copy of one of those classic albums from a group like, In Flames before they wandered off and did other things. So yeah, the album's got a little bit of its own personality while not straying too far from the formula. And let's look at a few of the tracks here. It starts off very well with the title track. Really, the first three tracks work quite well together. These are all up-tempo songs. They're all kept around like the 4 minute mark, which is, again, to their benefit. The songs will go through a lot of changes, change the pace, change the tempo, change the riff. If these kind of songs drag themselves out too long, they can get very tiring and they can start to drag a little bit. And like I said before, you really want this style of heavy metal to remain very energetic. So I think it's to the band's credit that they are keeping the songs short, to the point, very focused, and not letting them drag out at all. When you get to the fourth track, Dusk Sang Fairest, this one stands out because here's where they kind of rein it in and they go for more that mid-tempo melodic death metal vibe. This is something that Dark Tranquillity in particular was very good at in the late 90s. So this is the kind of song that the pace is a little slower. It's meant to get you swaying a little bit, very catchy, the melodies very easy to get into. You'll be humming them, for quite a while afterward. So the band shows that yes, they've got, that trick up their sleeve as well. They're not just playing the more raging, adrenaline-fueled melodic death. They know how to craft, those, more mid-tempo songs as well. So yeah, kind of going from strength to strength here. Yeah, the second half of the album also includes a short instrumental that has, that kind of, slightly folky vibe that you would get on things like early In Flames releases. Upon Stone can do that here as well. They've also got that kind of, quiet acoustic interlude worked into at least one or two other songs. But on, Noctualism, it's only about a minute and 17 seconds, but having it placed around track 6 or 7, track 6, I believe it was, it, again, gives you a minute to catch your breath, breaks up the flow, lets the band show off a slightly different set of musical chops, and then you can kind of, jump right back into things. So you get towards the end of the album, there's a couple songs that are just slightly longer. You get more into like the 4 and 5 minute mark with especially the track 8, The Lantern. This one has a little bit different structure to it. With it being longer, it starts to take on a slightly more epic kind of scope, which is fine. But yeah, it goes back to my earlier point that as these songs get longer, they will kind of lose some of that immediate visceral impact they can have. It is still a good song and put together well. It just feels different from the others because with that added length, they can do more things and let it steer in a different direction. The ninth and last track is a cover of Misfits' Dig Up Her Bones, which isn't really what you would expect for a band in this style to cover. I think it's a fun choice. I like that song a lot. It's one of my favorites from the Graves era of Misfits tunes. They do a fun job with it. It's maybe an odd fit. People might have thought, oh, why don't you cover something from the early In Flames or Gothenburg catalog? At the same time, that might have been a little too obvious. And if nothing else, I think the selection of cover does highlight something that you do see with some melodic death metal bands, that they're not, strangers to things like, the hardcore scene. This band's, aware of what's going on with things like, maybe mallcore or other styles that have been influenced by those originators of, the Gothenburg sound. So you pulling something from a Misfits playbook and interpreting it in this style, it's not as far-fetched as it seems. It works okay. Did it need to be there? Probably not. On the other hand, maybe it did, because despite having 9 songs on the album, It's got a pretty short run time, just getting over the 30-minute mark with not a whole lot extra to spare. This, despite the fact that you've got, 7 original songs plus the short acoustic instrumental before the cover song comes along. So with 7 songs, an instrumental, and a cover, they're still barely clearing the mark that most people would consider necessary to be considered a full-length album in the first place. And it still feels a little bit short. So if you took the cover song off the end, I think the album would feel really short. Maybe they needed 1 or 2 more songs, but I don't know. I do like the fact that it is sort of a short, compact package of an album. Doesn't overstay its welcome. The songs are all pretty good consistently from track to track. There's no duds on here. If there's one other minor complaint about the album besides kind of the short runtime, it's I guess that there's not a song on here that I feel you necessarily would hang your hat on. It doesn't have that one signature track that is really going to stand out and be the flagship of live shows and such. Paradise Failed and the title track Dead Mother Moon probably come the closest to filling that niche. Nevertheless, it's still a really impressive debut album, especially for a band that has not put out a lot of stuff before. Like I said, one independently released EP in 2021, and all of a sudden they've got a big label debut, and they've done a really nice job with it. I like the style, I like the way they've executed it, and it'll be interesting to see where the band goes from here. All right, so for this review, also want to give a call to arms to Besomora. This is an Australian melodic death metal band who released their first EP, Delusional Monster. This is an independent release that came out in December of 2023. I I got a copy of it as a promo a little while back. I knew the Upon Stone album was coming out in January, and I felt the two made a really nice pairing. So apologies to the band for not getting this reviewed sooner, but I thought this would be a really good place to include it. Besomora is also working in a melodic death metal style. They've done a couple of singles before this, but this is kind of their first more full body of work. The sound, again, is very influenced by things like At the Gates, In Flames, the typical kind of benchmarks for melodic death metal. The vocal style is worth pointing out here that it lends itself more to maybe like early or mid 90s era Chuck from Death. Fits quite well with the music, and the performances are very solid across the board. The EP includes 6 tracks, runs about 22 minutes, and it's a nicely varied EP. After the opener, Vagabond kind of sets the stage. You get a really strong track in No Remorse, checking off all the boxes that you want. They're a bit similar to what Upon Stone is doing, that the songs are staying pretty short, very compact, but going through, the different pacings quite well. Again, really strong drum work and guitar work featured throughout here. Mass Starvation is next. The band has a very nicely shot professional video for this track that you can check out on YouTube. This one has, a very catchy chorus and is obviously meant to be kind of the centerpiece of the EP. After that, they have a track called Beyond Atrocity. This is the track where they rein it in a little bit, go a bit more mid-tempo, and they deliver this style very well as in addition. There's a lyric video for this track that you can check out through the band's YouTube uploads as well. The last couple of tracks are also good. They do have one little misstep at the end. They end on a short instrumental track, which I don't feel was necessary to include on an EP of this length, or if they were going to include it, I would have put it before the final track. Use the short instrumental piece to kind of, break up the flow a little bit. Again, let the audience catch their breath. Then come back and try to close with one, solid rager to go out on a high note. But other than that one minor detail, yeah, I think it's a very solid EP. If you enjoy the Upon Stone album, I'd highly recommend checking out Besomora as well. It's also worth noting that the band got some nice guest appearances on a couple of tracks from a couple of Australian technical death metal musicians. Uh, the EP features appearances from Joe Haley from Psychroptic and also Toby Morelli from Archspire. So if you're fans of those bands, you'll want to check out their contributions to the EP as well. So yeah, in the end, we have another nice offering of melodic death metal by an up and coming band that shows a lot of promise. And I'll be interested to see how both of these bands fare moving forward. I've got to say, it's pretty nice here in late 2023, early 2024 to see a little bit more melodic death metal on the map. For the past several years, old school death metal has very much kind of ruled the roost, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's been a lot of great albums and great new bands playing in that style. I noticed moving through 2023, however, more and more people seem to be feeling that the scene had gotten very saturated, and I also noticed that some bands were sort of starting to move on and try some different things. This came up probably most notably with Two Molds, 2023 album. Melodic death metal, on the other hand, hasn't gotten a ton of love over the past several years. There have certainly been bands and albums out there, don't get me wrong. You've got projects like, Inexorum, which do really well in this style, kind of, blackened, death, melodic, all three of those adjectives in, different proportions. Early in 2023, we saw melodic death metal get a real shot in the arm with the release of Majesty's first album also. So between, bands like this constantly working at it and new things coming out, such as Dead Mother Dream from Upon Stone and Delusional Monster from Besomora, maybe we'll see, sort of the, tides shift there a bit and melodic death metals, due to come back around for a little bit higher visibility run in the heavy metal underground. And I think that would be absolutely fine. All right, that is going to do it for this review. As always, please check out other content on the Heavy Metallurgy channel. We try to have at least one album review up each week. Wednesday nights, there is an album club live stream, and Friday nights, we have a live stream with different guests, musicians, writers. We recently featured Albert from Decibel Magazine, just talking about different aspects of the heavy metal underground, different years, different topics. It's always a lot of fun. Until next time, everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.